Hello and welcome to The Point of It All Season 4. This is episode 1. In this fourth season, we're going to be introducing video podcasts, and I hope you guys enjoy, seeing my wonderful face during the podcast. They won't all be video; some will be audio only. But where I can get consent, we will do video as well. In this very first episode, we are going to speak with Ivy Chandler, who is the author of the book "Wait, I Wasn't Ready: Hope and Healing Recovery from Childhood Trauma." Ivy has an amazing story to tell. As a child, she endured some serious traumatic effects. And not only did she get through that, but she became in the process an amazing person that she is today. So without further ado, let's listen to my conversation that I had with Ivy Chandler, who wrote the book, Wait, I Wasn't Ready: Hope and Healing Recovery from Childhood Trauma. Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Point of It All. Today we have a very special guest, Ivy Chandler. Ivy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great today.
Good. Now, Ivy Chandler is on this show because she just wrote a book entitled Wait, I Wasn't Ready: Hope and Healing Recovery from Childhood Trauma. Mm-hmm. Ivy, tell us a little bit about your background and yourself before we get into the book, but tell us a little about Ivy Chandler.
Oh, okay. Well, just a little bit about me. Yeah. So I work as a mental health therapist. I also work for a real estate company out of New York City. And so I'm a program manager there. And I work with in affordable housing. I manage case managers across the country in these affordable housing units. They have case managers that help individuals, to do things like help with their rents. They might need, special services or something. So I manage them across the country, and it's a lot of fun. I travel a lot with that. And so also I'm an independently licensed social worker, and I've been doing that now for a little bit over 20 years.
Outstanding. Wow. So you're definitely credentialed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the housing arrangement you work with, is that public housing or?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, the company that I work for, they originally was this $1 billion company in New York City. And so one of the sons decided he wanted to go into affordable housing. So yes, so it is subsidized housing, and it is really a great company. And the way they go about coming in, purchasing properties, they upgrade them. And it's really a big deal to have like case managers or people such as that on the properties to help the residents that live in there. And so I have the pleasure of managing those case managers and service coordinators.
That's outstanding. Okay. Now, the book that you wrote, can you tell us where the motivation came from to write that book? To write this book?
Yeah. So personally myself, the motivation came from my own personal life. So I had been struggling a little bit about wanting to write the book because, but then I kind of thought, like, do people really want to hear this? Well, as I have worked in this field, I found out that not only do people want to hear it, I think it's a story that needs to be told. And so I decided to share my own personal story along with also some other clinical information around childhood trauma. And so I personally myself had endured a lot of childhood trauma. As you may have known in reading the book, birthed my first child at 13. And then my parents also, due to that, I was put out of the house. So I had to leave the house. And so I went to live with a sister. And so, the story is kind of long, but so if you can imagine a 13-year-old with a baby,
sure,
and not having the supports of the parent.
The book is absolutely fascinating. If you have a chance to pick up this book, please do. I'll be getting several out as gifts for myself, for my own family and friends, because it is that good. I've read it twice already, Ivy, and it's like I'm watching a BET movie or a Tyler Perry movie. I mean, it touches on topics that are kind of taboo in the Black family. Do you know what I mean? We don't really like to bring those things up, but I like your book because it talks about those things. Like every family probably has, or they know someone directly or indirectly who's had similar struggles. So to see someone with your background and your current pedigree that's lived that situation, it's going to help a lot of people. So I'm very grateful that you put this book out there. I know it's not easy to share that kind of information with everybody else, but you did it. What gave you the courage to do that? Because you're really making yourself kind of vulnerable to the world at this point.
Oh boy, yeah. I literally felt like I was naked standing outside.
I'll bet. Yeah.
But I have to say this too. I really believe it was a calling. I tell you, I don't take it lightly. And at the same time, I don't want to come off like, I did hard work to get there, but at the same time, I feel like I was blessed. I really feel like that my relationship with God really is something that really helped to see me through. I made a lot of mistakes along the journey. But one of the things that really resonates with me is that just the way that my steps were ordered. And when I followed the order step, things went better. And of course, when I didn't follow the order step, well, not so much.
We'll get into that too, because you have some interesting stories here.
Oh, yeah.
I think my biggest question for you would be, as I'm reading this book, I kept going back to the near misses that you've had along the way. I mean, you've experienced things that other people would not have recovered from, but somehow you managed to tiptoe your way around and through the minefield, and here you are today. Tell us about some of the stories in the book that you're surprised yourself that maybe you shouldn't have recovered from or gotten through.
Oh my God. Well, I tell you, one of the ones that's really so profound for me, and I think the reason why it is because I was just totally clueless. So one of the stories is that, I got involved with a group of people who, what happens is, you get involved with people that's kind of doing the same thing you're doing, right? So I was just trying to find my way, and I found people who would accept me. Because what happens is that, when you have a baby, you're young and out there, as a parent, they're like, we don't want you to hang out with her, right? Because I just looked like I was bad news.
Right.
I really wasn't, but I certainly looked at it like I was. And so I had this group of people. We used to hang out. It was the everyday thing. And so by this point in time in my life, I think I had started smoking weed, and they drank. And so we had this whole ritual. So I would go down to the house. I had the car. So I would go down to the house and pick them up. We'll put $2 worth of gas in this car, and we'll drive from west side to the east side to go pick up this nickel bag of weed. And but the other ones who drank, then we had to swing around and stop by the little store. They'd get their wine, and then we'll play cards.
Right.
We didn't have a life, right? So I had started this little school. I always had this thing about wanting to learn. It was always a desire. I just didn't have the support. But I did start this school, and I was going to this little school and getting my GED, actually. So this particular day, I couldn't go down and participate with the shenanigans we usually do. And on that day, all my friends who usually does, they went on with the usual routine. And when they came back and stopped in the little store to get, the wine, some young guy who was hanging out with them that day decided he was going to try to steal the wine. And so the owner of the store seen him and, accosted him like, hey, you can't steal the wine. Well, as I always say, his best thinking told him to pull out a knife.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was called armed robbery.
At that point, yep.
That was called armed robbery. And all of them was arrested and sent to prison for like 10 years.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's like, I literally would have been there. And
wow.
It's not just the person who pulled the knife. It's, it's like everybody who's
right. That's it. You're all together.
Yeah. So that was a near miss. I just thought to myself, and as I was writing the book, when I think back of the near misses.
Yeah. And the book is just filled with them. I mean, I'm not going to give the book away because you got to either buy the book yourself and read it for your own, but it's just filled with these things. But I kept going back to the thought that you made it through that to write this book. You made it through that to do what you're doing today. Yeah. And that had to be nothing but God. I mean, it's just really eerie how you just managed to get through all of that. And then you're here today. So that's testimony. That's a testimony.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the first things you did in your book was to forgive your parents.
Yeah.
Specifically your mom. Why was that important for you to do?
Well, one of the reasons why it was so important is because for me personally, it's one of those things, once you become an adult and your children are adults, and when you look back on your own life, it's like so many mistakes I made. And also recognizing that your parents are humans.
Mm,
And, I tell you, for
absolutely.
some people, it really takes a moment to get there, you know. And so when I think back, I wonder what happened to her,
That's a
you
good
know.
point.
Yeah. And so then my father, who tried to, just keep the peace. He was a keep the peace guy,
Mm.
you know.
Right. He was a no conflict guy.
He was a no conflict guy. He was just trying to just make everything work. And when I look back some things, my mom, she definitely had some of her own struggles, and I believe she had untreated mental health issues of her
Mhm.
own, because that's not something we even deal with in the Black community.
Right. We don't.
Yeah. And so so I did. I thought about that. It's like, I mean, thinking of it, it's like I hold no grudges. I mean, it was the path that I took in life, and I'm here to tell the story.
Right. I think a lot of it comes from, as kids, we expect our parents to have all the answers anyway. And when they fall short, well, I mean, you judge them. I mean, you judge them based on that knowledge or expectation that they have all the answers, and they just don't. There's no manual to raise a child. I mean, there are books that you can read, but there are no manuals for this, and we get
Absolutely.
along as best we can with the knowledge that we have, and we go from there. So I thought that was really profound that you forgave your parents first, and then you went on with your story.
Yeah.
Um, did you ever find out why your mom held such resentment towards you? Did you ever find out where the conflict or where the friction came from between you two?
Well, actually, it wasn't just with me.
Mhm.
It was kind of like in her life period. My mom, when I thought back and looked back, she wasn't a person who really had friends.
Mhm.
You know,
Okay.
I'm not sure. That's why I say I just wonder what happened with her. But something that did happen later on at the end of her life, of course, I was there to support her.
Mhm.
And she made the statement that I knew that you would be the strong one. And
What do
even
you
at
think
that,
what do you think she meant by that?
I had no idea at the time when it was happening, because I was probably, I'm thinking my mother died in 1991. So that's been at least 30 years. So I was probably in my late 30s. Well, wait a minute, late 20s. Well, somewhere in my 30s.
Mhm.
I'm trying to do the math. Yeah. Um, yeah, I had no idea what she was talking about. And I was
Mm.
moving in a better direction, but I mean, at that point in time in my life, I still had a whole lot that I was unraveling myself.
Right, right.
When I look back now, I don't know. I think sometimes, you look at your children and there's some things you can kind of see.
Was
You
she
know,
ever diagnosed technically with mental illness or officially or?
no, she was not diagnosed technically.
Okay.
As I said, most of the time during that time, she did end up in the hospital, but I don't know what really happened with that and what diagnosis that they gave her, if any.
During your childhood, was there at any point in time did CPS get involved? Were they ever called to the house for any type of intervention or?
Absolutely not. And so, I kind of made light of it in my book about it. It was like, where in the world was the welfare? Because
And I know it exists. I know it's a thing. Where are they? It just never
yeah,
came, huh?
they never came. And later I worked for child welfare as an adult once I
Mhm.
graduated from college. Yeah, and so I did. I thought back, it's like, where was child welfare? My goodness.
After reading your book, um, I was just gonna go back to your near misses, but we've already covered that. But I've never heard the term hypervigilant before reading your book. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah. So hypervigilant, it is like it's a clinical term that is used. And basically what it means, you're always on alert. And so when you endure any type of trauma, and especially childhood trauma, it kind of like creates this where you're always on the alert because you have learned that the world is not safe.
Mm.
whoever you're dealing with, is like you're not trusting. You're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's
Right.
that type of a thing. Is what
So
hyper is.
as a child living with that, what was it like as a child, always being on edge and always looking for, I don't know. I mean, that's just seems crippling to
Well,
me at that age.
so what happens is that at that age you don't even know it because you're just not even aware. You just
Mhm.
as I started getting older, I started realizing it because it affects your relationships. You don't trust anybody.
Right.
Someone do something, it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? It makes it very difficult to have good relationships when you're hypervigilant. In addition, it also
Is that
creates a
because
lot of,
you don't trust anybody? Is that what I would imagine would be the issue, is that
yeah,
you don't know who to trust? Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
you just don't know because what happens is, you're the regular life that one would live. It's like you're trying to still gauge it. It's very difficult to
Mhm.
gauge life when what seems like should be, I'm quoting air quotes here, normal, it's not. So you're still trying to figure out what is normal.
You touched on your relationship with the church a couple of times in the book. You had different experiences with different churches. What does your relationship stand right now with the church? Are you in a good place right now with the religion in your walk with God, or?
So yeah, so actually, I only ever really attended one church.
Okay.
It was like at two different times though.
Okay. So it was the same church, but okay.
It was the same church at two
Different
different
intervals. Okay.
times. And so, I tell you, I don't regret any of that. I mean, it was certainly a lesson I need to learn.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is, the church experience is just that. And then your relationship with God is something totally different.
That's very, very interesting. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Because I was not raised in a church, I didn't understand, once again, I'm air quoting church.
Hmm. Hmm.
I somehow had an expectation that people in church were, I don't know, I guess perfect or whatever. And of course, I found out quickly that was not the truth. They also was human. So
Yes, that is where I think a lot of us miss when we go to church. Like the pastor and the deacons, they're just like you. They are going to make mistakes and they're going to say things they shouldn't say and so on and so forth. They're not any more godly than you are. I mean, they're just people just like you trying to figure it out. So, I mean, I thought that was interesting that you
yeah,
pointed that out in the book as well.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so I'm glad I had the experience. And so right now, so my relationship with God is definitely tight. It's like it's very clear to me
Hmm.
that I'm here today. As far as
Is Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're good.
say, as far as having a church home, so no, I'm not attending. I don't have a church home, so I'm not attending in that way.
Okay.
I have had opportunities to visit churches, and I'm still open for all of that.
Okay. Is your practice Christian based or is it secular, or is
Yeah.
there a
So my I would say it's probably more so secular.
okay.
So if someone was actually looking for Christian based, they would probably be surprised once they get with me. So I don't list it as Christian based.
Hmm.
Um, the philosophies is definitely Christian based because you cannot get away from that.
Hmm.
You just can't get
Hmm.
away from it.
Right. Right. One of the passages that stood out to me really more than anything else in this book was the person you befriended while you were. She was there for care. I think she thought you were a social worker,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and you guys became friends, and that friendship played a pretty pivotal part in who you are today. Would you agree?
Oh my God. I tell you what, every time I tell that story, I just feel like I'm going to cry. It was really very short lived. I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
it was
Yep.
very short lived. So yeah, I was at a hospice care center and she came in and so it was not uncommon for people to come from the hospital,
Hmm.
with, basically knowing that they're going to die. And so they
Right.
come to the
Exactly.
care center for
Yep.
comfort and family can be there. So she came in that way. It looked like she wasn't, I mean, literally looked like she was unresponsive. And so, so the next day, here she comes walking down a hallway. I mean, with a woman. I'm thinking, well, what in the world? So we was talking, and so and so we just started talking, and that's what I would do. I worked as a unit clerk at that point in time,
Okay.
so I had not even attended school. And so as she was telling me talking, then eventually she got around to something she needed. And I realized it's like, oh, you need a social worker. And so she told me she thought I was a social worker. And I said, well, no, I want to be a social worker, but it's like, I'll be too old to go to school now. So this little old lady in her voice, because she had this whispery type of voice. And
Mm.
said, honey, you're going to get old whether you go to school or not. Now, as simple as that sounds, right?
Right.
For whatever reason, it was so profound to
It
me.
resonated with you. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just resonated with me. And I tell you what, I ran out of there and I immediately I applied for grants and student loans and all that sort of stuff. I
Mhm.
went to university, I applied. I mean, everything happened so fast. I couldn't even believe it. And so I don't know if exactly how much time it was, but maybe a week or two. I'm not even sure. I can't recall anymore. But I just remember once all that happened and I'm all set and now I'm enrolled to go, I came into work that day. I wanted to run down and tell her. And I got down to the room and the room was empty. And so I came back to the nurse's station because sometimes they would move people.
Sure.
Because the room is too cold or whatever. And I came back and I said, hey, where'd she go? And they said, oh, honey, she passed away last night.
Wow.
I cried.
Ah.
I mean, I cried. It's kind of funny now because they were looking at me thinking like, are you okay? Because I'm crying like, like this is
Sure.
my mother passed away. So I couldn't even explain it. I really couldn't. And so, yeah, so she was really just a profound, I mean, she came in my life quickly.
Mhm.
It was a short thing. And yeah. So yeah.
Some might call her a guardian angel or something. I don't know. Some might call her an angel.
Some may call her that. And I tell you, she also played another role because while we was talking, because when she was walking down the hallway, because I said, are you okay walking? Because I mean, actually, I wanted to say, I was kind of thinking, because I mean, you just came in here yesterday looking like that you were about to die. So of course I didn't say that. But I'm like, are you okay walking? And so
Right.
honey, when it get tough, you put one foot in front of the other and you just head in a direction.
That's it.
So I listened to what she said, didn't think much of it. But that also came back to me. That also came back to me when I got to grad school. And I was in grad school and
I remember the story. Yeah. Go ahead. You can tell us. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you real quick. I was exhausted because I was working full time and my youngest child was a teenager and that was challenging. I was divorced. And so, along with working full time and going to school full time, there's also this whole internship. I'm sure you remember, Shannon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't even know how I did it, but I was so exhausted. I pulled up in a parking deck and sat there and I was thinking, I can't, I just can't do it. I literally cannot do this. And so, everyone was just kind of going back and forth. They're laughing and talking. I'm just sitting there and tears is coming on my face. I am like literally in my second year of grad school.
Right.
I'm sitting here about to cash it all in. And her voice came back to me. Honey, when you can't do nothing else, you put one foot in front of the other. So I gets out of my little raggedy car, grabbing these books. And I am walking down towards my class. And this professor we had, he would always say something about people being late. He would call you out if someone come in late. And as I'm walking, I'm just thinking, listen, not today. Not today. I can't. So I get down there. I didn't even stop to blow my nose. I didn't even, I'm just walking. I get there. My face is red, tears, nose snotty. I open the door. It's like the whole world stopped. Everybody just looked at me. And I knew I had to be looking at a whole hot mess, right? I looked up, I went and sat down. No one said anything. And yep.
And here you are.
Here I am.
Let me see. It's one thing to make it through a traumatic childhood.
Yeah.
But as you got older, you still had work to do. Right. You knew that you had work to do on yourself. Tell us about the work that you put in after you became an adult and you decided, you know what, this is I can be better than this. I can be better than I am right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, what's kind of weird about childhood trauma is that even though things happen, you don't really know how much it has affected you, right? You
Right.
figure
Mhm.
just like everybody else, right? Well, as you start to age, you start seeing things are just not panning out. And like I said, I had problems with relationships. I didn't trust people, and just there was just several things. I started looking at myself and just thinking, I'm not sure I like myself very much.
Hmm.
So one of the things that did happen is a friend of mine told me one day. She said, "You are so angry." I had no clue. I literally had no clue. And I became so angry that she called me angry.
You see, yeah, I'm right.
I went and I found a counselor, a therapist. And I tell you what, I went to this man. I can't even recall how I actually found him. But anyway, I had the appointment. I go in there, and so there's this process that you usually do when you go to therapy. You go in, first you have to do this whole assessment thing. He didn't have an opportunity. As I sat down, I just
Hmm.
let it rip.
Oh, wow. All
They
built up.
angry. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, it was up and down. This poor man. God bless him. I don't even know who he is. He let me go with it. He just let me go. And I mean, between like screaming, crying, I mean, and everything,
Mhm.
denying that I'm angry, which was the funniest part. He just let me talk. And by the time I got finished, we went over because, it's only supposed to be, well, they're really called 50-minute hours because it's only for 50 minutes.
Mhm.
It was it was well over an hour. I think we was closer to like 90 minutes. So I raged probably for 90 minutes.
Oh, wow. You just let it all out.
It just all came out. I mean, I was talking about my childhood. I mean, I tried to like say everything all in this one sitting. And so, yeah, so to say the least, that was the beginning.
Oh,
And
my
he was
goodness.
so kind to me in a way that he was able to say, you know what, you really do have a lot, and it would probably benefit for you to be able to talk more. And so I went a couple more times and
Mhm.
everything, but then I eventually ended up finding another therapist where I was able to actually really work through some of my history.
Well, good, good. So we've been talking with Ivy Chandler, and Ivy Chandler again is the author of the book, Wait, I Wasn't Ready: Hope in Healing Recovery from Childhood Trauma. Ivy, when you sat down to write this book, who is your target audience? Like who did you hope would gain the most from this book?
Yeah. So I was hoping to target people who, of course, have a similar background, because I have come to find working in my field that there are a lot of people who were just like me. They
Mhm.
had endured trauma and didn't know it,
Mm.
because you just go through life, you just keep living, you walking around with your head hanging off crooked, but you're like, I'm okay. And so that was the audience I was hoping to reach, and hoping that people in that situation could hear the story and be able to identify. Let me take a look at myself.
Sure.
You know, there are a lot of people that on the outside, I mean, on the outside, I tell you what, you had never been able to identify my problem.
Hmm.
You know,
So you
um,
mastered you mastered that well.
oh my God, yes, I was pretty good at that whole thing. You know,
Hmm.
which also made it difficult when I wrote the book, because I was literally shocking to a lot of people.
Oh,
It's like
wow.
I would have never
I had no
guessed.
idea. Yeah. Speaking of family and whatnot, was that a concern of yours as far as them reading the book and how they might react to it? Did you pay that any mind at all, or?
Well, actually, no. That was one good thing. I didn't have to worry much about that. So both parents have already passed. And so I think that some of my family knows, and I have been kind of transparent with my family.
Okay.
I think that they know, but once again, some of those things are held within the family. You just
They
don't
are.
talk.
Yep.
Yeah. So I really felt a lot of support from my family.
Good. I know when I was a kid coming up, I'm sure when you were a kid coming up, um, mental health in the Black family, I won't say that it wasn't talked about, but it wasn't taken very seriously. I mean, a lot of things could be prayed away according to my
Yeah.
elders coming up, and there was no need to seek counseling or whatnot.
Yeah.
Was that a similar experience for you as well coming up?
Well, they didn't even address any type of mental health at all,
Mhm.
in my family. I mean, it was obvious some of the things as it written in the book, there was a lot of just dramatic things that was happening in within my family.
Right.
And the next day it was almost as if nothing had happened.
Do you
Just
think that's changing today with the Black family and mental health? Is that gotten any better, do you think?
I think that we are moving in a direction, but the stigma around mental health is just there, and a lot of people still do not want to accept it.
Mhm.
Even a lot of times when I'm talking to people, I have to rephrase it and talk more about emotional health as opposed to mental health. So we're a little bit more comfortable saying emotional
Mhm.
health. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
say mental health, it's like, oh
Such a
no.
stigma behind it still. After all these years, there's still a stigma behind anything with your mental wellness and whatnot. I'm sure that all nationalities have a similar feeling about mental health, but I think that we're still lagging behind, that curve and accepting it as a bona fide illness or sickness. So hopefully we continue to move in the right progress in the right area there.
Yeah.
We are nearing the end of our conversation with Ivy. Ivy, it's been amazing to talk about this book with you.
Yeah.
We've been planning this for like a few months, and we finally got our schedules in sync to do this. If you guys have anyone in your family, friends that have gone through traumatic childhood experiences and they don't believe there's a way out or there's help at the other end, I really, really encourage you to read this book. It's a very fast read. Trust me, you're not going to want to stop reading once you get started anyway, but it goes fast, and the stories the stories make up who you are today, Ivy. And I just can't thank you enough for writing this book, because I gave it to my daughter to read right now. She's reading right now. She's 3 chapters in and she's like, I want to read it again. Where's the rest of it? She's borrowing my Kindle. So thank you again for not only reading the book, but writing the book, but for having the courage to write the book and to give us your life experience. Anything you want to add in closing, Ivy?
Yeah, I always want to say thank you also for having me. And then I also want to say that, yes, so I also do have a counseling service, livingwellcounselingservice.com. That's the address to that. And so there, yeah, so I am still seeing clients. I'm working with clients. And so, yeah, I would just be happy for people. They could always reach out. Even if they have questions, they can reach out to me on my website there, Living Well Counseling Service. And that living is LIVIN.
Do you
Well,
offer remote counseling, Ivy? Like do Zoom counseling or? Okay. Oh, so that is a thing. Okay, good.
yeah, absolutely.
Ivy, thanks again for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I will make a note of your contact information as well in the description of the podcast, and as well on my Facebook page as well. Okay.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Take care. Bye.
All right. You too. Bye now.
I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast as much as I enjoyed producing and talking to Ivy over the last couple of days or so. Just an amazing person and a wonderful spirit. And in spite of everything that she's gone through, she still has such an uplifting and outpouring of wanting to help others. So I hope you guys were able to get out of that what I was able to get out of, and that is, it doesn't matter what your situation is, you still have choices to make to affect your own outcome in life. And if you need help with that, there's help available in most cases. In fact, Ivy is a licensed counselor, and I will make sure that we give her information out on my Facebook page, as well as on the description of the podcast on my podcast page as well. So, guys, with that, be sure to stay tuned to the channel, to the podcast. We have some amazing guests lined up. Some of them are already recorded, just waiting to be released by me. So stand by Please don't miss an episode this season. We are really stepping up our game and hope you guys can appreciate the work we put into it. With that being said, until episode 2, I will see you soon. Peace.